So I was just informed that in some of my recent videos I've been mentioning that we're going to talk about dry fire training, and today we're finally going to be talking about some tips and tricks that are going to help you develop some of those skills. Doesn't really cost you anything other than the firearm itself, and it's going to allow you to develop some of the fundamentals that you need before you go to the range. So be sure to check it out and let us know what you think. Enjoy. So first thing you're going to want to do if you're looking to get some good dry fire training is, obviously this is something you can do at home. You don't need to be at the range, but if you are not in a range environment, you're still going to follow the 4 rules of gun safety. You're going to treat all weapons as if they're loaded at all times. So let's start by unloading the gun, because we don't want to actually do any live fire training. So what I do is I've got these snap caps that I like to use, and I put some tape on the magazines that I use the snap caps on. So that's just an additional precaution. Obviously you're going to want to check that your weapon is clear, so that way when you're doing your dry fire training, every single time you want to make sure that you're thinking about that beforehand. When you get into dry fire training, there's a lot of different things that you can do, so let's just break down some of the basic fundamentals. We're going to start by talking about the 4-point draw and the reason you're going to do that. Then we're going to talk about reloads and malfunctions, as well as reholstering. So we're going to break these down into individual scenes, and you should focus on the things that are going to be related to you. So we're going to start off with the 4-point draw. Let's talk about the 4-point draw. I carry in the appendix position. I have it kind of offset so you can kind of see, and I obviously have my shirt out of the way. When we're doing some of the draw practice, I'm going to be removing my garment, but just so you can see. So think of step number 1 as getting a good purchase on the gun. If you have your gun close to you, a lot of times people get their thumb over the top of their gun. If it's an outside the waistband holster, usually you can get your thumb all the way around. Either way, your thumb is going to move to the proper position once you make the draw. So for starters, if we're in a situation, we want to make sure we've got a good stance, good situational awareness, and we're ready to go. So step number 1 is getting a good purchase on the firearm itself. Some people want to have their support hand in a good position. If I'm, again, concealed carrying, I'm usually going to be removing my garment. Step number 2 is where I'm going to turn and start to get ready to push the gun out into the target. Now, some people are taught in military and law enforcement that you can fire from this position. For guys just starting out and gals just starting out, I wouldn't recommend thinking about this yet, because you really want to be on the sights and have good trigger control. I don't want you thinking about pulling that trigger just yet. For people that have much more advanced training, that's another conversation. From here, you're going to bring your support hand in, and this is number 3, and you're going to start to think about getting a good sight picture. Fun fact about your eyes is they can only focus on one distance at a time, so you're either focused on the target or you're focused on your sights. Technically, you can't even focus on both the front and rear sight. That's why a lot of people will talk about front sight shooting. So at this point, number 3, we're getting our good support hand grip. We got a good grip, and now I'm pushing out towards the target. I like to think about pushing the nose of the gun straight into whatever I want to shoot at. And number 4 is getting that good sight picture, and then thinking about trigger management, trigger control until you can shoot. Now, after you're done shooting, you want to assess the situation, and then you can go back to thinking about reholstering, and it's really just going backwards and reholstering your gun and then maintaining situational awareness. Now, a lot of people, they finish shooting, they just look right down, and then they're down in their holster. You should still pay attention looking down, but you want to get comfortable enough to where you can reholster as quickly as possible without any sort of distractions or worried about getting your gun snagged on anything. So the 4-point draw is a great technique, and we're going to practice that slowly a couple of times. The cool clips on YouTube are guys that are doing all this fast, high-speed shooting. We're going to talk about how you can get faster, and we're going to do another video with shot timers and talk about some drills that you can do. But for today, I just want you to think about going through the draw, getting that good muscle memory. If you have an outer garment, so like right now, I'm carrying in a concealed carry appendix position, right? Let's try this again. So we're going to do 2 things kind of simultaneously, and we're just going to go slow. If we run into any snags, we're going to identify those things, and we're going to think about that. So if I grab my shirt too high, I can't clear the gun itself. So an easy tip that I like to think about, if I'm carrying outside the waistband, I use my support hand potentially for defense. But if I am concealed carrying, I need to clear my garment. So just grab where your gun is and then clear the weapon. So you've got good, make sure you can get a good purchase on the gun. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my shirt, I'm going to get my gun, and I'm going to push out and get good sight picture and then think about trigger control. All right. And I can even go through the steps, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. If I realize that I'm not getting a good grip or I'm getting ahead of myself, I can slow it down. So now that we've practiced our 4-point draw, let's actually do some dry fire training. We're going to talk about some reloads here in a second, but most people are going to be carrying concealed carry ready to go, one in the chamber in a good holster. We've talked about that in previous videos. So if I've identified a threat and I'm ready to go, I can draw. I've got good sight picture. I'm focused on that front sight, and the moment I see the target and I get my sights on it, I pull the trigger and then I assess and I come back down. Reholstering. I was going to say reholstering for last, but let's just talk about that while we're here since we've already kind of seen it. So after I'm up on the target and I assess the target, obviously the most important thing is that my gun isn't going to snag on anything and my trigger finger's here. I don't like typically having to look down because I want to maintain situational awareness, and if you need to do that until you get a good feel of where your holster is. But typically, you know, once you've cleared your garment, unless you need to remove it again, you should be able to kind of feel where your holster is. I like to think about, you know, using my finger as kind of a guide to get it back into the right position. So reholstering doesn't need to be done super fast. It can be as slow, as intentional as you need it to be until you've got the gun secured back in your holster. Reloading. Now this is one that's in, these speed reloads are in all the cool YouTube and Instagram videos, and for dry fire practice and practicing reloads, it's definitely a good thing. I definitely recommend it. But if your EDC gun, I don't know a lot of people that carry, you know, sidecars or spare mags. I do sometimes. A lot of times it's just my Bravo concealment holster and one magazine. So in this case, if I don't have a magazine to reload in every everyday carry situation, the training becomes, I guess, less relevant. Now, if you do carry in that configuration, you're going to want to practice. Some people use these Neo mags or having spare mags available. So the thing that I think is key to a good reload is situational awareness. I like to picture a little box right in front of me, right? If I'm doing my reload down here, right, I'm not paying attention to what's going on. The whole point of reloading is that I think I might need some extra bullets or to get my gun ready. So after the gun locks to the rear because I'm empty, I like to put the gun in a position where I can still maintain situational awareness, and as I go for my next magazine, I grab it with my finger at the top of the magazine, not down here gripping it, because that's going to make it harder to find the mag well. So reaching here, it allows me to find that mag well where I'm not necessarily having to bring my attention down here to do that. You can if you need to until you get comfortable with it, but I like to bring it straight to, push till it clicks, and this way I can still see what's going on. Then I can bring the slide forward and I can go from basically the 3 to 4 position again, okay? So when you're empty, you can practice bringing the gun up to a good position. Some people keep the gun downrange. I like to bring it to a position where I can assess the gun, it's in the way, I still can see what's going on. As I grab my next mag, I'm good to go. So reloading and reholstering, we already talked a little bit about reholstering. So now let's kind of go through that again. Let's go through it a little bit quicker, and we're just going to fire one shot, and we're going to assess, and we're going to see if we make any errors. And then the important thing with dry fire training is do it slow. Get the fundamentals down and the body movement down over and over and over again. Think through the situation, and then try it a little faster, and then slower, and then faster, and then really think about that. And then when you go to the range, see if you can do the exact same thing. So I identify the threat, grab my outer garment, 1, 2, 3, 4. Assess the situation, reholster, and we're good. And again, I'm not necessarily going for speed here. I'm really just focusing on the situation. Now I'm using snap caps and a Glock, so once that trigger resets, I'm not going to take multiple, but you can simulate doing multiple threats, right? So a little bit faster. 1, 2, 3, reassess, reholster. All right, lastly, let's talk about malfunction. So we talked about your 4-point draw, we talked about reloads, we talked about reholstering, we talked about situational awareness. Malfunctions is one that you should train for. One of the things I like to do is I like to take these snap caps sometimes, and maybe we'll do that today. We'll load a couple snap caps randomly into a magazine so I can practice a malfunction. We'll talk about that in another video when we're doing some live fire training. But let's say we're practicing here, and I'm going to draw, I'm going to pull the trigger, the gun's not going to go off. What do I do to cycle another round into that mag and deal with that malfunction? There are a handful of different types of malfunctions that can occur. Realistically, if you have a reliable firearm that's well maintained, if it's cleaned and lubricated and you have good ammunition, it's very unlikely that you're going to have a malfunction. If you do those things. Now, you still want to train for the reality you're going to have a malfunction. So in this situation, really the best thing that you can do, and this is one that I've seen before, is that magazine, it's not seated all the way in there. Maybe it has trouble pulling in the next round, right? So first thing I'm going to do in that situation, when I draw the gun and I realize that I pulled the trigger and it didn't go off, I don't really have time to figure out all this other stuff. Obviously, I need that gun ready to go. So I'm going to make sure that magazine's seated, I'm going to rack another round, and I'm going to re-engage. So this is what that looks like. Okay, so realistically, I want to make sure, the reason I don't rack first is if I do have a magazine that's not seated correctly, cycling that might not allow me to pull the next round in, and then I'm going to have the same problem again. So I'm hitting that nice and snug to make sure that it's locked into place. I'm cycling the slide to get another round in, because I don't care about why that round didn't go off. I just need another round in, and then I go back to the target. All right, now we're going to try a little bit faster, and I want to see if I can really smoothly run through it and get my shot off smooth and controlled without necessarily losing control of the gun or getting a bad grip. If I feel like I'm doing those are things that I can isolate, identify, and retrain for. All right, so that was a little bit faster. In our next shooting video, we're going to be doing some shot timer stuff, and we're going to do some live fire training. But realistically, I think that you should tailor your dry fire training to whatever you think you need. If you think you need practice with reloads, practice with reloads. Make sure you're safe. First things first, clear your gun, safety your gun, make sure that you got some good snap caps in. If you think you need practice on the draw, practice the draw. And again, you don't have to rush. This is just for training. Get those fundamentals down. Make sure that as you're drawing, you're getting that good sight picture. Before you squeeze the trigger, make sure you're assessing the situation. You need practice reholstering from whatever position you're in, right? So the movement should become natural and good muscle memory. And a last little pointer I get is a lot of times I'll see people when they go to shoot, whether they're shooting pistols or rifles, for some reason, especially in appendix carry, they'll have this tendency to lean back, and they'll stay leaned back. I think that when you're shooting, you want to be leaning into the target, not like a crazy amount, but the gun recoils and you want to be in a position where you can manage that recoil. So leaning back is one that I see commonly done. So let me know if you have any questions about dry fire training. I think it's a must. Before I go to the range every day, I like to get up in the morning, I like to work out so I'm physically ready to go, have a couple cups of coffee. I'm talking a little bit fast, so somebody told me that I maybe am too caffeinated this morning. So, but I like to work out so my mind is fresh and I'm amped up and I'm ready to go. Run through a couple of these draw drills at home so that way I'm keeping fresh, and then obviously that's going to give me the best bang for my buck when I go hit the range. So keep training. Thanks for checking us out. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you get that dry fire training in. It's going to help pay dividends down the road. Ammo is expensive and dry fire training is free. So be sure to get some good practice in there. Again, focus on safety. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and be looking out for new videos, and check us out on Instagram and Facebook. We'll see you next time.